thrive in the business jungle.
Welcome to Digital Leadership Lessons from Survival Training. I'm Florian Kneubühl, Project Manager, Survival Trainer, and someone who has learned both indoors and outdoors. Without trust, nothing ignites. You can be perfectly prepared. You can have equipment, experience, knowledge, PowerPoint, frameworks. You can have the driest tinder with you, the sharpest fire steel, the best technology, and yet it still remains cold. Because fire is not just technology. Fire is trust. Trust that it can work. Trust that the next attempt could be the right one. Trust that failure is part of the process, not the end of it. Out in the wilderness, you learn this very quickly because you have to do it alone. And in business, many never learn it. Because even there, teams are often in the dark, not because they lack knowledge, but because they are left in the dark, lacking trust and support. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. Survival and business story. I remember a survival course that made this lesson very clear to me once again. After we had worked with matches, quick results, visible flame, we went one step further, to the fire steel, and then to the fire drill. For many, the fire drill is the holy grail, archaic, physical, relentlessly honest. I explained the material, construction, and technique. Which wood is worked under which pressure, using the right technique and at the right rhythm. The participants carved their own drill bits, their own board, their own setup. And then we got started. One of the participants was motivated, I remember. He drove the fire drill. Again and again and again. For a full 5 minutes. Believe me. Anyone who has ever drilled a fire knows how exhausting it is and how long 5 minutes can feel. Sweat, tension, panting, but no embers. Minute after minute passed. His arms grew heavy. His gaze became vacant. His breath grew shorter. And after 15 minutes he paused. He looked at me and said, "I don't trust the material." I smiled. Not because I didn't take him seriously, but because I knew exactly what was happening here and what he was going through. It wasn't the material, not the drill, not the board. It was a lack of confidence in the process and in himself. He no longer believed that his efforts and all his friction could actually produce fire. And this is exactly where people falter. I have seen the same thing in companies for decades. Teams that have everything, skills, tools, experience, budgets, and yet no fire. Because no one allows the first spark. Because no one dares to really try anything. Because every failure is immediately judged. Politically, personally, career relevant. I remember a project with a fantastic team. Technically strong, mature, motivated. And yet, there was an invisible wall between individual colleagues. Different technologies, different procedural models, and associated with this, different identities. Each team wanted to define its own spark as the only correct one, its truth, its dogma. They no longer spoke to each other, they talked about each other. What looked like professional discussion was in fact a political battle, a proxy war, The real battles were being fought higher up, between superiors, between centers of power. And the teams? They were inoculated with opinions, with loyalty tests, with subtle threats. A dissenting opinion would have been interpreted as desertion, with the corresponding consequences. And so it remained dark. No light, no warmth, no energy. Only cautious movement in the dark. And a great deal of wasted energy without fire. Insight. The survival moment and the business moment tell the same truth. Distrust extinguishes sparks. Trust ignites fire. Not immediately, not spectacularly, but sustainably. Business transfer. Trust is not a soft skill. It's not a nice to have. It's not a feel-good topic. Trust is a survival factor. Without trust, decisions take forever. The need for control increases, responsibility declines, and initiative disappears. With trust, on the other hand, decisions are made more quickly, control becomes unnecessary, energy is released, and responsibility is taken. Trust is the spark on which everything else is built. When it is lacking, symptoms arise, like rumors, covering one's back, hidden agendas, escalations. The system burns energy without producing light. And many organizations consider this to be normal. It is not. It's a cold warehouse. Lessons. If you are a leader, then make trust your number one priority. Not as a cliche, not as a value on the wall, but in your behavior. Give trust before you demand it. People respond to goodwill, not mistrust. Create small spaces for initial sparks, experiments, pilot projects, mistakes without judgment. Address doubts openly. Uncomfortable? Yes. Necessary? Absolutely. Because doubts are like wet tinder. And believe me, you can't start a fire with wet tinder. Celebrate the first spark. Not just the big fire, not just the perfect result, but the moment when someone had the courage to try. Reflection. Ask yourself honestly, where is there a tension in your team because of a lack of trust? Which sparks are being extinguished before they even have a chance to ignite? And the most important question, where could you yourself be the first spark? That was why trust is the best match. The next episode is about something that affects every team at some point. Leadership means managing thirst. A leadership topic that goes deeper than many believe. Until then, stay alert, stay honest, and don't forget, survive the wilderness, thrive in the business jungle.
Thrive in the business jungle.